Liberal Fox News commentator Jessica Tarlov was yet again forced to relentlessly fact-check her four MAGA co-hosts as they spread one lie and falsehood after another. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. It's another episode of pure Jessica Tarlov goodness, comfort food to get us through the next 27, 26 days before a perilously close election that we may very well lose, even though I think most people admit they'd rather be Kamala Harris than Donald Trump, given the fundraising edge, the slight polling edge in the national head-to-head and swing states. But again, Trump could very well win this. And so with that in mind, we got to have some comfort. We got to have something, some sort of security blanket. And watching Jessica Tarlov own her MAGA co-host is just that.
Out of the womb.
No, but the reality is often when you're talking about, some of these third-term abortions, it's about
that's not the reality. That's what you want to tell people the reality.
Well, no,
the reality
that is a reality in some states. But the bottom line is Donald Trump is protecting women in terms of law and order. Are you kidding me?
Law and order.
As the criminals run through this country and they're bailed out because people like Kamala Harris made a decision that we should bail everybody out.
You just said that, okay, women are overwhelmingly Democrat. There are more women voters, right? You guys you can vote for abortion. Go for it. No one's stopping you. Out of the womb.
No, but
So again, obviously they're triggered by the facts. Third trimester abortions are fleetingly, cosmically rare and almost always for medical emergencies. Number one. Number two, crime is down. This is something that MAGA Republicans really like to clutch their pearls and cry about because they're emotionally invested in this narrative, this falsehood that under Democrats, the country becomes a dystopian, murderous hellscape. But facts are facts, and facts don't care about your feelings. And I can say that because I'm not running for office, so I can be totally blunt with anyone watching, including centrists and conservatives. Facts show that crime rates are down, particularly with respect to violent crimes. This is from an NPR fact check, just as one of many gazillion examples, but they describe it very succinctly from the J.D. Vance-Tim Walz debate. Of course, crime rates vary by city, but overall, across the country, violent crime dropped nationwide in 2023, with murder falling by around 10% from the year before, according to data released just last week from the FBI. This is the key part. More than 16,000 law enforcement agencies sent their crime data to the FBI, covering around 94% of the population. This year-end data released each fall by the FBI is the most complete look at national crime rates we have, but is a little dated. Still, according to preliminary FBI data, violent crime has continued to drop nationwide in the first half of 2024 compared to the first half of 2023. Data from other researchers also mirror these results. Some crime analysts say it's likely that violent crime rates will fall below pre-pandemic levels by the end of the year. Okay, crime spiked under Donald Trump during the pandemic, and it has been declining ever since. And again, I understand crime has not totally gone away. There are still people who are victims of heinous crimes all across this country. But to say that overall crime is staying the same or trending upwards is a lie. And if you disagree, you're either an idiot or wrong. Sorry. So here's some other, another fact check, I should say, from Jessica Tarlov pointing out the inherent dishonesty of the Trump-Vance campaign.
But this Michigan thing, and obviously we desperately need to win Michigan, but on the ground, I don't see this. On Tuesday, J.D. Vance had a rally there, and there were guys wearing auto workers for Trump shirts that weren't actually auto workers, so just paid to wear the T-shirt there. When there was the auto workers strike, Joe Biden on the picket line, Donald Trump had a rally that he said was in support of the unions, but was at a non-union plant because the union workers didn't want him there with him.
So again, it is discouraging the extent to which that Vice President Harris is not getting as much of the union support as President Biden has, and quite frankly, as she deserves, given that the Biden-Harris administration and Democrats have bailed out the Teamsters' pensions using the American Rescue Plan, which was opposed by every single Republican. So it is because exclusively of Biden, Harris, and Democrats that the Teamsters' pensions were saved, and Republicans should get no credit for it. And as a consequence of this, or rather despite this, the Teamsters at the national level have not formally endorsed Vice President Harris, although many, 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 many state chapters and local chapters have. So She's certainly doing better with unions than Trump, but not as much as she should be, given her record. But it is important to point out that Donald Trump is engaging in flagrant dishonesty and trying to maximize the perception that he is really the union candidate. As Jessica Tarlov points out, auto workers for Trump admit that they're not actually auto workers. They just threw on the shirts and stood there at a Trump rally. I have another clip to play of Jessica Tarlov, spitting facts, spitting fire, but I do want to play a couple of these clips back to back of Jeanine Pirro engaging in just massive, weird cope about Trump and Vance versus Kamala and Tim Walz.
There's Donald Trump. You just saw him. I mean, he's relatable. He's seen as cool, and he has a swagger.
So she says that this New York billionaire, real estate mogul, is relatable, that he's cool, and that he has a swagger. Not sure why his favorability and approval ratings aren't higher. You would think that with all that riz, as the kids say, all that charisma, that he would be doing better in the personal qualities aspect of the polls than what he is, in which he, is almost always behind Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. Another clip of Jeanine Pirro being weird.
And I mean, it's not even close. So you got this World of Warcraft video game that's 20 years old, and it's not even, by the way, in the top 15 games now. And
you did a deep dive.
Gotta have Walz, who doesn't even go to war. He ditches the battalion before war and can't even make believe he's playing in a war.
I should say that Donald Trump dodged the draft to avoid fighting in Vietnam. Which, listen, I definitely wouldn't want to be drafted either. But this idea that you're going to make fun of Walz, who served his country in the National Guard for decades, gave military service to somebody who went deliberately out of their way to avoid military service. It means there's just no question Walz is vastly superior in this regard. So for you to denigrate Walz's service and pretending that Donald Trump is a beacon of bravery or ignoring his cowardice, it's really hypocritical and pathetic. But that's Jeanine Pirro. So here's a good clip of Jessica Tarlov again, spitting some facts about the state of the race and Donald Trump's struggles with women voters and women cohort groups. Typically good stuff from her.
And the Harris-Walz administration. But I find it difficult to sit for all of these discussions about how the Democrats are blowing it with men and this is irredeemable and, we're terrible and we belittle, et cetera, when the gender gap on the other side with women is bigger than the gap with men. So Donald Trump is losing to Kamala Harris with women 15 to 20 points, which is bigger than the margins of any Republicans have before. And I don't hear the Republican tour about women. I just hear him, even on with Andrew Schultz, doubling down on, it was good to get rid of Roe. That's no problem. And Andrew Schultz set him up perfectly with a hilarious joke about how Barron is such a stud and bet you're feeling bad about getting rid of Roe v. Wade. Mm-hmm. And Trump can't even nail it because it's so ludicrous that he's a, quote, protector of women. That's the outreach to these women who are saying the Republican Party has abandoned us. They do not care about our needs. They do not understand our health. They do not understand our health care issues. They don't understand family planning. They don't even know how it works. You don't even have a heartbeat at 6 weeks.
It's hard for men to hear abortion described as family planning.
Really? Would it be hard?
Because
we are talking about women.
Let me finish. Because whenever you have to rely on a euphemism to describe the reality itself is awful. That's all I'm saying.
But
call it what it is.
Nobody is celebrating abortion. Like, I don't know. I'm sure, we live in a country of 330 million people. I suppose you could find somebody out there who just gets really excited, who has some sort of abortion fetish. But that is not the vast majority, the vast and overwhelming majority of people who have abortions. They, no matter what the trimester is, it's not celebrated. It's seen as a deeply personal, medically invasive, and often psychologically scarring, potentially traumatizing procedure. So the reality does suck. I think basically everybody would concede to that, but it's still a right. And it's a right that people value. And that is why Republicans have lost eminently winnable elections since 2022 as a consequence of Donald Trump's assault on women's bodily autonomy and rights. So again, I think Jessica Tarlov lays out a pretty compelling argument here, which is that, because again, it goes to the double standard, right? And I'm never going to stop talking about the double standard until the double standard goes away, because the double standard is taking an inherently difficult job for Democrats, for liberals, for progressives in this country. I mean, the deck is already stacked against us in terms of change just because of the institutional roadblocks along the way. But then when you add on top of it the double standard, which is what she's noting is the five and centrists are saying that Democrats aren't doing enough to court young men, which is probably true, right? And certainly something to note. But where are they talking about what Republicans should do to court women? Because Republicans are losing women to a greater extent than Democrats are losing men. So if Democrats losing men is a problem worth addressing and criticizing the Democrats over, then by definition, you should spend even more time criticizing Republicans for losing women. But again, it's the asymmetry. It's that Democrats, we have accepted that Democrats have an obligation, a duty, politically, electorally, morally, to reach out and please as many people as possible. It's why even liberals will write so many op-eds in New York Magazine, the New York Times, and the Washington Post and elsewhere about, we really need to try to understand the Trump supporter more. What can we do to appeal to the Trump supporters? And then they self-flagellate and, how us out of touch elitist Democrats who know nothing, what can we do? How can we prostrate ourselves before the real American, the Trump supporter? And I think trying to understand the opposition is absolutely important. But shouldn't Republicans be doing that too? Where are the op-eds? Where the calls like, hey, Republicans, you've clearly made mistakes. You've clearly screwed up. You've clearly, alienated people. You need to win elections. So where is your self-awareness? Where is as a matter of fact, not to give J.D. Vance too much credit here, because I think it was a cynical ploy, but one of the most memorable nights of the vice presidential debate for J.D. Vance, and one of the things that earned him plaudits, was when he admitted that the Republican Party screwed up in alienating women, and that their messaging, their rhetoric, their policies have been woefully inadequate, that they've taken well-deserved defeats with women, and that they need to do better. He admitted that they were inferior in that respect, the Republicans, that they were struggling in that respect, that they were losing in that respect, that they deserved the criticism, and that they should engage in introspection and do better. Now, again, I think it was a cynical ploy, but you don't see that sort of humility and introspection and self-awareness coming from MAGA Republicans in the Republican Party. It's because we just bake it into the cake. They can say or do whatever they want, alienate whatever they want. They don't have an obligation to court voters. The Democrats do. Yeah. Again, this double standard is ridiculous. It takes an inherently difficult job, makes it even worse. Good on Jessica Tarlov for pointing all these fact checks out. And in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.